Hello and welcome back to the Hook. Now we'll have our guest, who is a writer for the Daily Texan and the executive producer of Friday Night Football, Cameron Kubena. Cameron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Julien. Glad to be on the show.
All right. Well, we're gonna get right into it. If the BCS National Championship was tomorrow, what are the two college football programs that you would put into this game?
Well, if the championship was tomorrow, it would undoubtedly be Florida State versus Alabama. But I don't think it's going to end up being that way. I think the greatest tragedy in college football is going to happen this season, just because I don't think Florida State's going to finish out the year undefeated. I mean, they've got the Carolinas left on the schedule. I think they can run into some bumps along the way. And I don't think they finish undefeated. I think there's some things that they need to take care of that will come up as flaws. And Bama's going to end up being undefeated. But then that goes down to whether Stanford's going to get in or whether Oregon or Baylor gets in. But I don't think either of them do. I think Ohio State, since they're ranked third in the BCS standings, will get in if that team loses. And I don't necessarily think Stanford is I think Stanford's better than Ohio State. But Ohio State gets in, they're going to be undefeated, winning in the Big Ten, which I don't think is one of the bottom half of the conferences in this league. I think they get in, and I think Alabama will stomp them. I think that's what's going to happen. It's a tragedy that the playoff system is not in place for the season, just because I think there's such a wide range of talent out there with all these teams in the NCAA.
Oh, well, we discussed this before the show, and I know we had some disagreement about it. But isn't there something to be said for playing your schedule and playing every game on that schedule well and winning every game regardless of conference, regardless of your strength of schedule and whatnot?
I think what you're talking about is if Ohio State ends up winning the rest of their games, whether they're worth being in there just because they finished out undefeated. No, I don't think so. I think whenever you look at what Stanford has done, even though they've lost one, look how they just berated Oregon a week ago. They completely stopped that offense that has been putting up 40 points a game. They completely took care of them. Do I think Stanford has shown themselves to be a better team than Ohio State? Absolutely. But the records won't show that. And the points in the BCS system won't show that either. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. But if you take a look at what Baylor has done, an undefeated team at this point, Florida State, an undefeated team, Alabama, an undefeated team, what they have done throughout their seasons, they've played very tough competition aside from Baylor, and Baylor's going to have the opportunity to prove that in that 3-game stretch between Tech and Texas and Oklahoma State at the end of the season. If those teams finish out undefeated, by all means, they deserve a shot at the national championship. But by the competition that Ohio State has faced, no, I don't think they're better than a one-loss Stanford. I don't think they're better than a one-loss Florida State. But the way it looks like this season, if they do go undefeated, they're going to be in.
All right, Brooks. We talked about this also earlier before the show even began. We're talking about the playoffs that's going to be coming up in effect on the 2014-2015 season. Now, as we both discussed, we're talking about the conference, who's going to be winning the conference championships, who's going to be winning this and that. Now, by all means, you were talking about this, just a little bit earlier, but I want you to reiterate just a little bit. Who do you think it will be a better competition when it comes into come to the playoffs position? A team that went undefeated in conference, or a team that basically lost 1 or 2 games to big name teams, but they still have better competition as well?
Well, I think a team that's undefeated in their conference, I think they should be in the playoffs undoubtedly, just because we're not talking about the national title at this point. We're talking about a chance to get to the national title, and by winning your conference, you've got a reason to. You're undefeated, there's no reason why you shouldn't have a shot at it. But if you're looking at a team that has a loss on the schedule, they absolutely have a shot as well, because the way I see a playoff working out, you're still going to have voters in on it that are going to get to decide who gets into a playoff. So a team that has a one loss, like Stanford, will still get in. So I don't think that's going to be a huge issue, but you still get those teams that go in. A team that wins their conference is definitely going to get in. I think that's deserved.
So what about those teams who are in those conferences, such as like the American Conference or some of those lesser conferences, but then you have a one-loss Clemson team, a one-loss Missouri team, a one-loss whatever team from a more powerful conference? What does that mean for those teams who get in the playoff? They can make some noise as opposed to one of those lower-ranked conference teams that just won their conference.
And I think that's an excellent point to bring up. I think as soon as the playoff comes around, you're going to start seeing more conference realignment, because the SEC is so tough and competitive, and the American Athletic Conference is relatively easy whenever you look at it that way. So I think really things need to be mixed up through the conferences, whether that's a realignment as a whole and start going north, south, east, west like the NFL, or something else. Because honestly, if you look at what Louisville's done and you see a team like Houston come in and Rutgers, and you compare them to Ohio State, Bama, Florida State, Oregon, Stanford, Missouri. You can go down the line. Out of all of those teams, the American Athletic Conference cannot stand against. And I don't think they. And whenever you talk about being undefeated in a conference, I didn't even really think of the American Athletic Conference whenever it comes to those teams. I don't think they deserve to be in. I mean, it's a good thing to me that Louisville got upset, just because I would be very upset if they got in and became a bowl buster, just because I don't think they deserve it over a one-loss Missouri, a one-loss Stanford.
Right. Well, thank you for joining us and sharing your opinion, Brooks. We really appreciate it. You have a good weekend. And coming back, we have the best segment of the show, the fastest 5 minutes in sports. Stay tuned. This is The Hook.